Welcome to the Youth for Youth podcast series by the Mohanji Youth Club. I'm Anusha and I'm joined by Mohanish, and we'll be hosting today's session to share a little background on our work. Through our MYC Crisis Management project, we've been offering free disaster preparedness training and awareness to communities globally, focusing especially on children, teens, youth groups, and underprivileged communities. As a part of our U-Lead initiative for educational institutions, we have delivered sessions both online and offline to many young minds, preparing them for a range of challenges from natural disasters to man-made crises and mental health during emergencies. And through this journey, we realized something that's very important. As a disaster strikes, most systems are designed for adults. We often overlook is that children experience these situations very differently. And today's conversation is something that feels very real and very close to what we do. And we are glad to be joined by our guest here, Patricia Frost, an expert in pediatric disaster medicine, and she has dedicated over 10 years of her work to this field on a much larger scale. She is the President and Executive Director of the National Pediatric Disaster Coalition Inc., a non-profit with mission to connect novices to experts and ensure the needs of children are addressed in disasters. She is a former country director of emergency medical services with decades of experience as a pediatric clinician and educator, and also serves as an adjunct faculty member in the Harvard Beth Israel Disaster Medicine Fellowship. Welcome, Patricia, and it's truly a pleasure to have you with us today.
Well, I am thrilled to be here.
So to start off, we'd love to hear from you. How did this journey begin? What drew you into disaster preparedness, and especially for children?
Well, I have always wanted to work with children, even when I was young, and did some volunteer work in physical therapy, and then eventually went into nursing, and right away started to become interested in pediatrics. So I started my career in working with uh, as a student nurse at a hospital in pediatrics, and then was eventually, after I finished my training, went into both neonatal and pediatric critical care. Then moved to being an educator and taught at the University of San Francisco in their pediatric program, and then went on to be an educator at Lucille Salter Packard Children's Hospital at Stanford, and was there for almost 30 plus years as both an educator and a pediatric nurse practitioner. So I spent pretty much my whole career. Now, it was funny because, well, I shouldn't say funny, but ironic, I would say. Uh, my job as an educator was to train the people in the hospital about what to do in a disaster. But I really did not appreciate the full weight of preparedness until I actually moved into public health and left the hospital setting and went to work for the county of Contra Costa and emergency medical services. And I was there for about 13 years. And that is where I got very involved. I had the pediatric background, but this is where I learned what disaster and disaster preparedness and disaster response was really all about, because the place I worked was responsible for those activities and working with all the different public, private stakeholders to respond in a disaster. So it really gave me a wonderful appreciation, and I've been learning ever since. There's so much to learn. It's a constant adventure. And I feel very grateful to have learned from all the people who have been so generous with their knowledge over the years. And so, the nonprofit and the work with the National Pediatric Disaster Coalition really has been our way of being able to share that work and to bring more people to the table and get more people in the room to address these issues. That's an excellent question. Um, we have been trying to answer that question and provide solutions for that. But what we know in disaster is that both women and children are disproportionately impacted by disaster. Um, and there's a number of reasons for that. On the medical side of the equation, children are physically different than adults. They have not fully developed. They have breathed faster, they're lower to the ground. So, in a chemical or smoke events, they inhale more of the toxic smoke or the chemical in those circumstances. Um, their immune and their organ systems are still developing. They depend entirely on the adults and the um, safety net systems that are in our community that are supposed to be there to protect them. And if those situations fail or are disrupted, um, then they are at high risk. Um, Cognitively, they don't perceive, depending on their developmental age, they don't necessarily perceive danger in the same way that adults do. And so their situation awareness, which is something that we develop and we learn as part of disaster, is limited. It's limited. Um, so, and then the other challenge is that pretty much all the energy that is put into disaster preparedness and readiness in community is directed at adults. And where adults work, where adults live, the hospitals, emergency medicine, all of those things. So they're designed by adults for adults, and and children are not always at the table, and their advocates are not at the table. So it takes individuals like yourself learning about this to welcome, children to the table, and to keep in mind that we have to do some unique things to really protect children appropriately. The standard evacuation poster assumes that there's literacy, there's the physical ability, and the independent decision making for people to act on that. Children don't have any of that by default. You can't assume that. They can learn it depending on their developmental age, but you know, so this is why we need to, work on this. It's going to be a constant challenge uh, because, children are not always in the room.
Right, and I agree with your point that systems are designed for adults and it is designed by adults, and kids don't get to say they are not on the table and they are vulnerable. So yeah, that's right. And this leads me to the next question. Maybe you could just shed some light into specific examples of how not preparing children for disasters has led to serious consequences.
Unfortunately, there's lots of examples like that. Uh, these situations arise really in every disaster. It depends on, how well the, immediate bystanders and community are able to protect the children in those situations. But the ones that we hear about the most are when there's catastrophic disasters, where people go in and basically study and get evidence and, begin to tell those stories. For the United States, I think the biggest effort was around Hurricane Katrina. And because of the circumstances of the flooding that happened after the hurricane arose, that flooded a large part of communities, and people were trapped and could not evacuate. And when they were evacuated, it was a very chaotic situation. And there were over 5,000 children who were reported missing in that circumstance because they got separated from their families. And so that direct failure really created an opportunity for people to think differently. And because of that, in the United States, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was established. And to this day, that nonprofit has been a cornerstone in helping to address not only missing children, but also is now a huge advocate for protecting children from victimization online and promoting cyber safety, and has resources not only for the community, but also directly benefiting children themselves with various educational things that are age appropriate, or gaming that increases their awareness. That is a major threat right now. And unfortunately, in disaster, those threats always increase. So child victimization, child trafficking, all of those issues go up in disaster, because the safety net systems and the people who are supposed to protect children, their lives have been disrupted, and so they're less capable of being able to come to the rescue, so to speak. The other example that I can give is with the 2011 Tohoku earthquake in Japan. Um, you know, there were a very large number of children who were in the community. What we do know is that Japan is probably one of the most progressive countries in terms of earthquake preparedness, and spends a lot of time being able to focus on children and preparing them. And the schools that had conducted these child-led evacuation drills had a faster and more orderly evacuation. And in fact, the older children led the younger children. Now, unfortunately, they weren't able to save everyone in those circumstances, but they made a huge difference in the lives of the children they were able to save. I think, again, you're exactly right. You have to understand what age they're at and what they already know. So getting to know the children, where they are, what their community is like, how many children are in the community, what resources their families have. So you have to, what I call, would curate, or design the intervention of preparedness depending on um, where you find children in the scenario. This is why schools are so important to this effort as well. So I think if I were to give people tips to what they can do in these situations, I would say you need to understand the children first, who you're going to be speaking with and where they are developmentally. Um, you need to be seen as a trusted person. So, working with people like their school teachers or their parents or families or an organization that is local is very powerful, because then you coming into the situation, you're seen as a safe person. Um, you don't want to scare them. And so, one of the biggest strategies that we see over and over with groups who are doing this preparedness or creating resources are through what we call social stories or storytelling or simple books and activities. There are so many groups that are doing that. One of the groups that are one of our liaison advisors is COPE, Disaster Champions, who is really taking this on a global scale and has their resources translated in different languages. So there's like little jingles and there's little stories and there is videos for kids to be able to do. And it and creating an event that's special is really, really important. The other opportunity that you can have is to get children familiar, or create an opportunity for children to become familiar with the responders in the area, you know, to invite a doctor or a firefighter or an ambulance, a paramedic, you know, into the classroom to kind of do a show and tell and be able to show their equipment and how that works. Um, as children get a little bit older, around middle school, um, then you're talking about the opportunity to actually have them do what we call an exercise or a practice with it to evacuate their classroom. We do this all the time, in the United States around fire drills. We have them practice the fire drill, what they're able to do. In the Midwest, they have them practicing what to do in the event of a tornado. In my part of the state, it's we prepare for earthquakes, so we have them practice not only the information of what to do, but actually physically practice it over and over again. So they just don't, don't have to think about it. They know what to do, and everybody is on the same page as far as that. Skills you can teach children are basic things like, children as young as, you should start to socialize children to what their full name is, what their parents' full name is, not just mommy and daddy, or in whatever language that you call your mother or your father, um, but where they live, their address, if a phone number, um, and where there is a meeting place if the child becomes separated. For younger children, helping them to identify who, if they are lost or separated, who are the helpers in their community, to identify that, okay, who's the policeman I need to, find, or who is, if there's a family with with other children and stuff, or a parent nearby, to be able to find a trusting person in order to do that, or to go into a building and find the person who is the security person or the salesperson who could then help the child then get additional help.
I think that's really right, Patricia, and you gave a lot of insights into coaching kids, what background theirs is, where they come from, and to understand all these factors and then create something for them. And this is what we have also done when you shared about getting them to familiarize with the responders. We have somewhat tried to achieve it through having role play sessions with
Good.
kids, you know. So yeah, we have tried doing that to make it more interactive for the kids.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Anything that you can do that will involve a physical activity as well as learning the cognitive part. Okay. We, even as adults, the way we hardwire our um, ability to respond in a situation depends on um, both what we learn, but also what we do. And when you connect that psychomotor, that mind body connection, okay, that hardwires the activity so that and the more you practice, the more it becomes a capability so that when an event happens, you can remain calm and you can follow through with the activity. Um, uh, I think you can find examples of children doing extraordinary things at a very young age, um, and actually saving lives because they knew how to call an emergency number. They knew what to say. They knew how to tell people where they were. These are simple things that every child should be able to learn and to and families should encourage.
Also tried doing the same with the kids. I had an experience of taking the heat wave sessions recently for the underprivileged kids, where we tried to make them familiarize with the numbers, as you suggested, the numbers of these, departments from where they could call doctors or any person who could come and help them. Yeah, so we've tried doing that, and it has helped. And as you say, it comes with practice too. So maybe we could have 2 to 3 more sessions so that they become more and more familiar with these things, and that will help them respond calmly during, if at all any crisis occurs. So maybe on that note, maybe you can share some light on what are the 2 or 3 basic skills that every parent should teach their children to handle crisis.
Well, every children, every family should involve their children in preparedness to the best of their ability. Now, we know that many families across the world and even in the United States don't have the ability to get a lot of stuff, but there are small things that can be done to put together, you know, uh, some food, some water, the medicines that families might be taking and needing, and to involve children in that preparedness process so that they have their own little, what we call a go kit, that might be a backpack, it might be a pillowcase. It doesn't have to be something terribly fancy, but again, involving the children in the preparedness process for your family and to practice with them. As we said, phone numbers, their names of their parents or grandparents or aunties, yeah, all of those things. That is, they need to know who they are, who their family is, and how to get in touch. Those are simple things to be able to socialize children at a very, very young age. And then as children grow and become um, middle-aged children, you know, but in middle school, I should say, um, they can begin to learn about CPR and AEDs and choking, what to do in the event of a choking or a seizure of another person or a family member. So that can be something to be aware of.
As you said regarding CPR and making them familiar with these things, we've also tried having the first aid sessions. We have collaborated with some of the hospitals to conduct first aid sessions for school kids through the ULEAD initiative that was started by Mohanish. And yeah, that's right. I think we have like one last question before we close. Was there any moment ever in your personal journey that felt particularly difficult, and what helped you stay grounded and get through it?
So I think the things that were difficult, or I would say challenging, life is always difficult at certain points in time. But I think the thing that was especially challenging is being responsible in my role in when I was working with emergency medical services, and for really understanding how to work with people, to bring them together, and to collaborate on preparedness activities, and feeling like there was still so much to learn that I wasn't quite sure I was confident in myself. But you, but when, but I knew I wanted to be better at doing this. So constantly learning and then putting myself into situations that were really unfamiliar and learning ar- with the people around me and trying to soak that up as a sponge, um, to uh, to improve my awareness and also understanding of how to be more effective in uh, this work. Well, what you're doing is so very important, and it is essential to really achieving full community resilience. Um, I just recently joined an organization that is the International Association of Social Capital. And what I discovered in joining that organization is that it validated everything that I had been learning in whatever field it is that if social capital is part of what makes a success, how well, you are and how effective you're going to be either as an individual or, a group or an organization. We're invested in building social capital. I'm so delighted that we have some social capital with you guys to be able to participate today. But you, in your activities, are building social capital in your community. Um, you're making ties between individuals and families, close friends, and your neighbors. You are starting to branch out into different individuals and groups and colleagues and acquaintances from different backgrounds. And through that work, I am confident that you are going to be able to connect individuals to more formal power, and hierarchies and institutions that can really truly advocate not only for disaster preparedness and resilience in communities, but for children too. So I'm very proud of you guys that you are, so engaged and are doing such wonderful work in this area. Um, I think I think the main things are is that you start small with children, with the little things, and you practice over and over again. So, you know, ha- have them know their family information, have teach them the difference between urgent movement and also panic, to try and center themselves if they find themselves in an uncertain situation, and to figure out where they are, where do I go, and who do I follow, and then and then learn to call for help in the right way, and the more that we're able to do that, the more confident children will be, and it will be a safer world for them and for us.
We would be able to do a part of whatever you have suggested and try our best possible to achieve
Well, I
that.
hope you stay in touch, and we have already connected to you via social media. And I think it's very important that in social media, a lot of times, you post about what you're doing, but also we believe that sharing is caring. And so we share, extraordinary successes along the way. And so we hope to connect with more youth, hopefully through you, and have them connect to us so that we can share more information that is really directed at the mission of doing the right things for children when they need it.